everybody's going to be there to see Abdul. Everybody. There are going to be GMs. I'm not talking just coaches. I'm talking about just scouts. There will be GMs at Penn State's Pro Day trying to figure out, is this guy a number 1 overall pick?
It's been a hot topic of teams potentially not doing a spring game. There's been several big programs that have said, you know what, hey, screw that. You know, we don't want to put our players out there in a light that other teams can see the tape for free. Guy makes some plays, guys make some splash plays. This whole Wild West of NIL, transfer portal, tampering world.
Dion went and tweeted the other day and said, you know what, like, screw the spring game. I think it would be awesome if we had instead of doing an inter-squad scrimmage, we had another out-of-conference opponent come here, practice with us for a couple days, just like they do in the NFL. And how awesome would it be to be able to test your scheme and really test some things out, see what guys at that point in time you can trust and put in front of that spotlight to go and perform well against other competitions.
And you also mentioned, like, Tyler Warren was the guy. We don't have Tyler Warren anymore, right? So yeah. Another room that you wanted to talk about was the tight end room and how that develops. So that's even more important that we develop some type of receiver threat this year.
But the guy I really want to talk about, man, is
quarterback sneak right side, touchdown, Penn State!
Whoa! Who knew I would make it this far?
Back again, Jay, just chopping it up. Where are we this week? You're a traveling net.
Yeah, well, it was my birthday on Monday, so I'm in Paris right now. You know, I enjoy frequenting Paris a lot. I speak French, so it's an easy place for me to be, and I move around pretty fluidly. So,
that a boy.
Yeah.
Jay, the traveling man. If you guys don't know it yet, I obviously know Jason a lot better than most of you. That guy is always on the move, always on to the next thing, always on the next adventure. So you've been to Paris a couple times, so that's dope. I know you like it over there. That's cool. Hope you enjoy it. Appreciate you taking the time to chop it up this week with me a little bit here while you're out there.
Pocket, man.
Yeah, no, we got to give
me juice every week, man.
Yeah, we got to give the people what they want. And then last week, you obviously hit the NFL Network, had a great segment up there. I don't know if anyone, can search that, look at that, but definitely worth it. Jay's quite the personality on camera, and a hell of a job there.
Thanks, brother.
And I think the last update for you is Fairway Huddle coming out this week.
Yes,
got
sir.
the teaser out there. Looks really
dropping
good.
Today, baby. Dropped a little teaser yesterday. My boy Javon Holler just signed a 3-year, $48 million deal with the Giants, man. Really great player. Had some really productive years in Miami. Avid golfer. Great personality. Really good dude. I really enjoyed speaking with him and learning about his story and, all his football adversities through the years. Really interesting. He was in college at that weird COVID time, where some players, they were thinking about not even having the season because they were in the Pac-12 at the time. He was at Oregon. And they ended up starting the season later. So a lot of guys kind of stopped training and stuff. And it was just a really weird situation. Plays his freshman, sophomore year. COVID happens. And then he actually opts out of his junior year and doesn't play his junior year. And then opts into the draft and still gets drafted in the second round. I don't think many people understand just how big of a risk that is to just only play 2 years in college, not play your junior year at all. And then just opt into the draft. To go second round just kind of speaks to his talent and how good of a player that he is. So that was really cool to learn. I thought that was really interesting, man. Great dude. Check out the episode. It'll be on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of that, man. Check it out. Fairway Huddle. It's going to be a great show, great series. And the best thing about it, we got money going to charity, man. So it's for something bigger, as always. You guys know how big charity means to me and giving back of that nature. So I really try to make sure that this show incorporated that. So excited.
Yeah. No, it's killer, dude. I'm excited about it, and you'll also be able to see it on all the state media channels, college sports co channels. We'll be pushing it out too, trying to get some traction. So that's dope. Only life update I got, Jay, other than grinding in front of this computer the rest of the week, is I'm doing a 3-day juice cleanse. Your boy doesn't pump the iron anymore, but he's trying to get the health back up.
I like that, man. I like that. That's a good move, man.
Health's on a premium.
As you get older, health is wealth, man. You got to start watching what you eat, and what you put into your body means that much more as we getting up there, man. I'm closer to 30, man. I'm 29 now, so I'm getting on the same wave. I feel you.
Yeah, I just hit 30 in February, so your boy's taking it a little serious. So, but yeah, with that being said, covered a lot last week, covered a lot the week before. Kind of want to just shift the focus now to spring ball, what we got coming down the pipe, in particular with Penn State football and the boys up there, and then we're going to kind of go out and touch on the pro day, some of that stuff at the end. But you said, talking about spring ball, man, you mentioned before we hopped on here, I think this is a cool little thing because it's been a hot topic of teams potentially not doing a spring game. There's been several big programs that have said, you know what, hey, screw that. You know, we don't want to put our players out there in a light that other teams can see the tape for free. Guy makes some plays, guys make some splash plays. This whole Wild West of NIL, transfer portal, tampering world. Like, we don't want to risk it, right? But you mentioned Dion coming out and saying, hey, let's kind of shape these spring games like the NFL preseason. Let's get some out of conference, whatever. Let's just get some games, some friendly competition between two programs in a little bit more of a controlled setting, which I think would be obviously really cool when you're talking about the need for revenue generation in college athletics across the board.
Absolutely.
Pretty unique thing, but dive into that a little bit from what you've seen, your take on it. And I want to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Yeah, Dion went and tweeted the other day and said, you know what, like, screw the spring game. I think it would be awesome if we had instead of doing an inter-squad scrimmage, we had another out-of-conference opponent come here, practice with us for a couple days, just like they do in the NFL, like we have in preseason. We'll have a team, the Giants will come to the Lions and practice 2 days and then have their actual preseason game and kind of do that type of schedule and have the spring game and play against another team. And, Fran Brown, the Syracuse head coach, he had quote tweeted Dion's tweet and he said, hey, man, like, let's go. We're coming. Like, it's on, So I don't know if that's actually going to solidify into something tangible, but I think that'd be really, really dope. And not only that, but it's a real opportunity for you to check the temperature and kind of test where your team is at. Everybody knows how much of a grind spring ball is, going against each other every single day. It gets really redundant and things of that nature. But, man, how awesome would it be to be able to test your scheme and really test some things out, see what guys at that point in time you can trust and put in front of that spotlight to go and perform well against other competition. So, man, I think it's a dope thing. I don't know how they'll work it out. Mostly spring games are normally free. I'd assume that, it wouldn't be free anymore. There'd be tickets for these games, maybe not. We'll see, but I think it's a really dope thing.
I think it's super interesting because you have like this accumulation of a lot of things going on, right? Like I mentioned, the tampering, right? But then now you also have the roster cuts going down to like 105 from like typically like 125 to 135 guys, right? And for me, spring ball was all about, with the exception of your ones just getting kind of back in the rhythm, like you have your guys who are your guys. Spring ball was a lot about the depth development, like guys getting reps who aren't going to get reps during the season, other than scout team, which is what it is. You can get some stuff out of that if you approach it the right way, but oftentimes it's so scripted, it's hard. So spring ball is great for those twos and those threes, trying to say, hey, I deserve a little bit more burn here, deserve a little bit more run, and being able to show it in a setting. That's obviously going to be approached differently with less guys, right? Like, it's
100%.
It's that. And then subsequently, the first thing I brought up being that there's a lot of tampering going on and people are canceling these games because they don't want to broadcast it. That's just an element that's going to cut into it as well. Like, how much depth development is there really? Are you trying to protect it? Do I think that from a player standpoint, this is a great thing? Because like you said, the monotony of spring ball, for 3 weeks, you're just beating the hell out of each other. And like, Jay, like, you knew if I, by the second or third practice, if I said a certain thing and made a certain check, like, you knew where the ball was going. You know what I mean? So It's like, there's an element of getting those live fire reps and which is better. But I'm really curious to see how folks will approach this. Is it going to be more pressure from the athletic department because it is a revenue driver? Or are the overwhelming theme of what a lot of these programs are doing in terms of protecting visibility into their roster going to kind of is that going to take over and not allow things like this to happen? So I love the concept, though. I'll be completely honest with you. I think it would have been sick. Like, think about, we're not going to get the Pitt-Penn State rivalry as much played, but think about if you made that the spring game every year, right?
Yeah,
where Pitt-Penn State came in and did it, or Pitt and West Virginia, or you can go down the line with some of these old rivals that make a lot of sense geographically.
Yeah,
I think it'd be really cool, and it's an awesome concept.
Yeah, no, that would be super dope. And you mentioned a whole bunch of aspects of it. I like to attack them one at a time. I think number one is the roster size deal. Cutting these rosters down to 105. I had a chance to talk to Franklin. I was texting with him, asking him, hey, why'd they do this? What's the reason behind it? And every rule, it's money. That's what it's about. It's money. They can't legally limit scholarship numbers of teams, but they can legally limit the roster sizes of teams. And, when you limit these roster sizes down to 105, now these coaches and recruiting are able to promise these guys more money because there's less guys for the money to go around. It's really simple from a revenue sharing standpoint. Obviously some teams are structured different in terms of the way they distribute NIL and things of this nature.
But also, Jay, sorry to cut you off, but also with the roster limit, there's also the taking away of scholarship limitations. So we had 85. Realistically speaking, an athletic department could technically dedicate all 105 full scholarships to that if they wanted to.
Oh, no, that I didn't know.
Which is super, because there's no more scholarship. You know how it was always 85 guys on scholarship for football?
Exactly. Yeah.
The scholarship limitations are gone.
Oh, so wow. I didn't know that. That's a big change.
You could technically put all 105 guys on scholarship if your athletic department, obviously you're taking 20 other scholarships away from
other sports,
what could technically be distributed, but essentially what it allows them to do now from an athletic department standpoint is say, okay, football, basketball, and
everything else,
women's soccer are our three sports that we really have a chance to win in. We can dump as much resources into that as possible, but it's going to take away from other sports. See what I'm saying?
Wow, that is actually really interesting. That kind of makes you want to think about Title IX and how that affects things. That's super interesting. Okay, so I didn't know that. It makes a lot more sense, honestly. And now that I've heard the discourse about the getting rid of the walk-ons and things of that nature, now that makes so much more sense as to why that's an argument. I think typically every college team maybe has 4 or 5 preferred walk-on guys that they think maybe have a chance to earn a scholarship, but typically you'll have 10 to 15 guys or just 10 guys that are just straight up walk-ons, GPA boosters for the team. Great guys, great job. Hey, say it how it is. Let's be real, man. I think if you're a walk-on, I think your level academically has to be higher than most of the scholarship guys. That's typically what I've seen. That's typically what I've been a part of personally. I'm sure it's pretty similar to other schools. But that's the reality. When you get those recruiting letters and we're like, hey, man, Penn State football, 3.5 GPA across the board average, that average is going down, guys. Might be a 3.1 now. Maybe it might be 3.2. Those guys who are 4.0 academic, all Big Ten guys, there's going to be less of them. So that's a really interesting thing because, as you know, there have been walk-on legends for as long as we've ever known. The Carl Nassibs of the world. Tyler Davis earned a scholarship while we were there. Sam Ficken the same. There's guys. Von Walker. Those legendary walk-on guys. It might be coming to an end. Or maybe they get them a half scholarship or whatever the case. Yeah. But it's going to change. Is the point? It is going to change.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. This is just the world we're living in, man. You got to adjust. You got to shift with it. So that's what it is. So roster size is a thing. When it comes to roster size, you have coaches like Matt Rule who have come out, like you mentioned, about the transfer portal and about guys being poached and not wanting to put film out there. We had a spring last year in which we incurred a ton of injuries, and Coach Franklin had to slow down practice. We had basically a week straight where it was a lot of just walking through and mental reps and things of that nature. We could see that really come into effect with the fact that the roster size is down to 105. A quick string of injuries to any one position really can really affect the way you approach practice. So It's definitely something to keep a look around across the country, because we know that injury bugs happen and can happen at any time in our sport. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we live in. So, this is definitely going to have impacts in all kinds of ways across the country, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It's a lot of back end stuff, right? Like it's a lot of in the team meeting room, and truly it's becoming more the general manager, NFL machine cog type of thought process with a lot of these things. A lot of these are business decisions, which is super interesting. And I'm happy you brought up that point to be able to throw in the unlimited scholarship thing, because that's massive. I mean, then you start talking about schools that just have, like Penn State has 30 some odd varsity sports as compared to like a Clemson that has like 16. Most of the SEC doesn't have more than 16, 17, or 18 varsity sports. Yeah. So, that's a big problem. Like it's those schools have more money to allocate to different resources. You could potentially see some sports get cut. It's just becoming much more cutthroat and much more business oriented. And that kind of carries on from our conversation last week about the field naming rights deal, right? Like that deal was structured in a fashion to drive revenue, and a lot of these decisions are going to be made with money and finances being at the forefront of it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you bring up a great point. The fact that a school like Clemson, SEC schools, they only have 15, 16 teams. Like, we're a unique school in the fact that a guy like Pat Kraft, he wants to win in everything. And the fact that we have 30 sports, there's going to be a ton of decisions to make. Like, let's not forget, guys, like when I was at Penn State, like the women's volleyball won like 4 out of the last 5 like national championships. You look at Penn State wrestling, like they're still on an Alabama, Nick Saban football type of run in terms of championships year in and year out. Like, we have a lot of sports that are like that truly are very successful year in and year out. So, you love to think that these sports such as women's volleyball, men's wrestling, men's football, are probably going to continue to be the priority. But unlike some other schools, there are just more teams that are in conversation in terms of priority, just because the reputation that they have and what they've done over so many years just can't be overlooked. And I think that those coaches, those athletes, they deserve what they've been getting and more support. And there's going to be some sports out of our 30 odd teams or whatever it is that are going to be, in a sense, left behind a bit. And there's going to be tough decisions that get made. But at the end of the day, I'm always on the side of whatever sports generate the most revenue should get the most money. I think that one's kind of a no-brainer to me. This argument that, everybody should live in this equal world and everybody should get the same, I don't believe in it. We talk about people talk about the WNBA all the time. Like, everybody was watching Caitlin Clark this year, but WNBA still lost $40 million. They're still in a deficit. You can sit here and say, we're going to set out for the CBA. We don't get paid more and this, that, and the third. But unless there's more viewership, unless there's more money being driven out of ticket sales and things of that nature, it's hard to sit here and argue for the WNBA or whatever sport it is that's lacking in money to get more. And that's just the reality. And that's life. Let's be real. That's life. We don't have to sit here and pretend and sit here and give out participation trophies, this, that, and the third, just because people participate. That's just not real life. And I don't think teaching people that or approaching things in that way is helping anybody, to be real. I mean,
it's a simple game of supply and demand.
Yeah.
It's super basic economics. And, to your point, a lot of the feel-good emotional ties to it, it's tough. But, again, like, it's the world we live in. You're not going to make business decisions on emotions. You're going to make business decisions on finances and how you're going to make more money. And that's again, the cog and the direction that college sports is going. But I want to kind of transition here because you brought up a great point about the injury bug and all this stuff. And I think, another point we talked about was like the cramming now of the end of the football season to winter workouts to now spring ball. Couple that with the scholarship or with the roster limitation getting shaved down, all of those things. How do you think Penn State specifically now, like let's focus in on the boys up there, how are they going to approach this spring ball, right? Because when you look at the changes, last year, spring ball was much more of a focus because we had so much turnover in the coaching staff side of things. I think obviously Jim Knowles coming in is a point that needs to be hit. They're going to be doing a lot of work establishing the fundamentals of what he wants to do defensively. But Coach K's coming back. It's more of a build, right? They have something to work on last year. They probably are doing a bunch of self-scout. They're trying to build off some concepts they put on tape that are going to be wrinkles to try to confuse guys this year. But they're in a much better spot from that standpoint. How do you think they approach spring ball as a whole programmatically?
I mean, I think this is a trend in football across all levels, from NFL down to college. You know, the all season just getting shorter and shorter. You want a 12-team playoffs? Well, the season's going to go longer. The season goes longer. There's less time. And you need time. You need time. When you got a guy like Jim Knowles coming in, he has got to come in and see and evaluate what the hell he's got. He's got to. Because, you know, the best coordinators, the best coaches, they adjust their scheme based on the personnel that they have and can be able to evaluate, okay, this is going to work. This is going to be able to be our type of identity because we have X type of players and Z type of players. So he needs that opportunity to get out there to see these guys at full speed, getting after it, and really be able to evaluate. And the eval time is shorter. So I think, you know, defensively, they've got to attack this thing. They've got to attack it hard. They've got to get as many bodies as they can, as many reps as they can with the little time that we now have. You know, I don't think Penn State's approach is any different from an intensity level and things of that nature. You know, we are and kind of always have been and more of an old school type of program. We're about that work. We're about that action. You know, obviously Coach Franklin is smart. He's not dumb. You know, if we get in situations where it's no longer in the benefit in the long run of the team, then we'll switch things up. We'll go more walkthrough. We'll get more meta reps. But, you know, mindset wise, we're attacking this thing. That's kind of how we always have been. That's how we attack the weight room. That's how we attack everything. So I expect when this thing gets going, when they get through that acclimatization period of time and they start to hit it and those pads come on, I mean, I expect full speed. I expect live action. I expect guys going to the ground and really getting after it. And I think they have to. I mean, you mentioned AK in the offense. Like this storyline and narrative of these wide receivers from last year needs to be put to bed, and needs to be put to bed fast. Expect a ton of 7-on-7. I expect a lot of 11-on-11. Drew has got to get comfortable with these guys, and I think that's a mistake that happened last year. Is there just wasn't any true chemistry. You know, there was no true solidified guys of, I trust this guy in one-on-one situations. I trust this guy on third down, whatever the case is. We had that in Tyler Warren, but we didn't have that in the wide receiver room, and it is important. It is very, very important at that skill position that you have one or two guys, preferably two guys, because we know Ohio State, year in and year out, they've got three guys. Year in and year out, no exaggeration, and they're league as they're departing. So we need to close the gap when it comes to that, and you know we can get into it. I mean, I like the wide receiver room, and from the first 3 or 4 names, I think there's a drop off in depth after that. But like these two guys that we have coming in, you know, Kyron Hudson, I like him a lot. Great 50-50 ball guy. He's great size, 6'1", 185 pounds. I heard actually the other day that that coach, our strength coach, God, why am I blanking right now?
Losey.
Yeah, Coach Losey. Yeah. He said he's about 11, 12 pounds already, and this guy just got there. You know, I think that's a great news. Devontae Ross from Troy, also, he's a yak guy. He's a really good route runner. I got to watch his highlights from Troy, and the thing with like, the argument of like, oh, you know, you're bringing in Devontae Ross from Troy. Like, who is that? Or what competition is he playing? I think it's important to note, guys, that like, even if a guy comes from D1 AA, like the skill position difference isn't huge as you may think. It's bigger when it comes to the O-line, D-line, because it's really hard to find big-bodied athletes that are athletic and can move. Like, that's what makes a Division 1A offensive line or defensive line. That's like the gap. But from a skill position standpoint, man, you can go find guys that can play on these D1A teams. So, you know, when I watch this guy run routes, I think he runs great routes. You know, he's a little bit small, 5'11", 160. So I don't see a lot of highlights from a standpoint of really sticking in the nose in the run game. And I know that's big to AK because we got two big backs. who can really, be home run guys, and that how important that blocking on the outside is, man. That can be the difference between a 10, 12-yard run and a home run. So I'm excited to see how Devontae is, how fast he can get comfortable in this offense and learning it all from AK. And then there's a bit of a drop-off. You got Caden Saunders. Obviously, you got Clifford, veteran guy who's going to go out there and do what he has to do. I'm Caden Saunders, who's coming off injury, twitchy guy. But the guy I really want to talk about, man, is Tyseer Denmark. I got to see him in practice. I think this guy is super twitchy. I think he has Golden Tate type of traits in the slot.
He got a little burn last year at the end of the year.
He did. He had a couple of big drops, but I think it's just nerves. I don't think his hands are a big concern at all. We'll see him in the spring, obviously, and kind of get a better evaluation on him. But, this kid can go, man. He is twitchy. He can shake people out of his shoes. He's got big yak potential. This is a guy who can be a weapon, who can be a gadget guy, toss, sweep, handoffs in the run game. He can do a lot. And AK, man, AK is going to scheme stuff up for guys who've got juice. And Tyseer's got juice. And I hope that, he's really attacking this spring because I think he has a huge opportunity.
Yeah, you did a great job of highlighting all of those guys, by the way. Thank you for that. I can now dive into a few of the points. You talked about Ross's body type and how that might not necessarily fit with the offense, and I'll flip it on the other side of the coin, though, where if he's a guy who is a threat down the field, he could kind of handle the blocking with his taking the top off.
Yes.
That being something, right? So It's there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I think the thing you talked about at the beginning, what I believe is extremely vitally important, because we've been talking about this receiver thing now for 3 years, right? It's been a constant theme heading into the offseason here. And you talked about Drew and how important it is, the timing, development, all those things. I think it's really important now, again, with a year under their belt with AK, kind of what they want to be offensively. Now it's about building those things that you were talking about, where how do we get the matchups we want to get, right? We have the foundation of the offense down. Now, can Drew start taking the next step from an evolutionary standpoint of when I bring this guy in motion, I'm getting him off coverage. He doesn't have to beat press. It's 3rd and 6. I really like him against this matchup because by bringing him inside, they're going to switch responsibilities. He's going to be on a nickel instead of a corner, whatever it may be, right? Those small intricacies are where he's going to start taking the next step in his personal development. And Coach Kaltenecki can subsequently bolster that and tool him with that, and also build the confidence in those guys to do it. And that's the one thing that I've always talked about, specifically in the receiver room, is at the end of the day, playing that position, playing any position at a high level is about the 6 inches between your ears. But specifically at the receiver position, you know how DBs are. It is supremely important to have guys who, on those third and mediums, line up and are I got man, I want the football, I'm gonna win, right? Those types of guys from a quarterback's perspective are the guys that you want to be around. I'm not sure if they had that the past few years. A guy who was almost in a Geno Lewis type of mentality, Gene Bean, he may have not been the most talented dude on the face of the earth, but he was one of the most fucking confident guys. I can guarantee that.
Oh, yeah.
And that gave me confidence to give him chances, right?
Yeah.
He wants to win. He's going to do everything he can to win, whether he's tooled physically or not, right? So, and subsequently, he made a lot of damn plays because of that.
He was a 50-50 ball machine, Gino. I'm telling you, man. CFL now, still killing it.
Torching it. So it's how do you find guys A, who have the right mentality, and then B, you wrap the scheme and then subsequently the quarterback play and confidence and understanding into that. And that's kind of the nice part about where they are offensively is I think last year they needed that, but they didn't really have the time to establish that outside of Tyler Warren. And you also mentioned Tyler Warren was the guy. We don't have Tyler Warren anymore, right? So another room that you wanted to talk about was the tight end room and how that develops. So that's even more important that we develop some type of receiver threat this year with again, the foundation of the offense built. How do we start kind of adding layers to the complexity and the understanding and depth of mastering the offense? And I think that comes down to putting guys in the best positions to be successful and everybody understanding the why behind that. And that's another great thing about Coach K is he's a teacher. So he's going to get time to really focus in on those things now because everybody understands what the primary outline of the offense is. Now he has time. So that's what I'm really interested in watching is the development of that. It's the next level development of understanding mastery of the offense and position specific advantages that some of these guys bring to the table.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned that I don't want to go over the fans' heads because it's a really important point that you talked about, and that's AK using motion to help our receivers get guys the hell up off of them, get them out of press. You know, like a lot, we talk all the time about AK and, you know, the formation changes and, you know, I think a lot of it had to do with the backs and tight ends, and I don't think there was enough of that at the receiver position. Sometimes we were in bunch, we'd get out of bunch, but like that gives the DBs time to still get in position to be where they want to be. Like we need more stuff on the fly where the DB can't get close, can't be where he wants to be, has no choice but to play off. Like more of those type of situations. I think that just helps these receivers breathe. It just gives them more room to run their routes crisp in the way that they want to without having to deal with the press man at the line of scrimmage. So that's a great point that you brought up, and I think that's a place that AK can grow because, I mean, he's done such a good job with whether it's unconventional formations with O-line spread out or the tight ends, you know, moving from one side to the other and changing strength of formation, the backs moving from the backfield out to the receiver position, you know, things of that nature. I would love to see more of that involved with the receivers on the run. So that's a great point that you brought up.
That's why I said I think it's really important to understand. I think he needed to get the foundation built last year. Yeah. And he's got that. So that's why I think it's really important to focus on where now you're going to start seeing, okay, the foundation's built. Now, how do you want the kitchen to look? How do you want the bedroom to be designed? Right. Like those are the types of that you're in that stage of building now, which is really fun because it's all matching what you said about Jim Knowles, which is now it's matching really in depth. Like what do my guys do well and how can I help them maximize that while also protecting their deficiencies, right? Yeah. How do I put them in the best position to be successful? Schematically, whatever. And then how do I teach everybody why that is and ultimately dictate how the football gets distributed? So, super nerdy there, but like that's the cool spot, at least offensively, where I think that this spring focus is going to be.
And it's all cool
pushing
stuff.
It back to Knowles. I don't want to jump over Knowles because I think we have a lot of development there. You know, I've been a tough critic on the linebacker room all year. I love the guys that are in there, but just developing right now, he's in kind of the reverse stage of where K was this year. Like, how do you see that developing on the defensive side of the ball? Jimmy's and Joe's. How's it all gonna shake out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of glaring open spots. You know, we could start at defensive end. I think it's pretty obvious that, you know, Denai Dennis Sutton's going to be our guy on one side. And, you know, big glaring hole where Abdul Carter left. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We don't have a player of that caliber at the other position. It's going to be a by committee type of deal. Just from a talent perspective, and there's going to be a ton of production to replace there, but I think they still have some guys that are athletes that can come in and be productive. You know, Coach Franklin went out and got Anai White from Texas A&M. He's a former 5-star guy. You know, 2 career sacks at Texas A&M, not a ton of production. I thought he made the most out of the times that he did make it onto the field. I got a chance to watch some of his highlights as well. Seemed like a guy that has all the tools, but just hasn't put it together. You know, he's got twitch. He's a strong guy. He's big. He wore number 6 at Texas A&M. You know, looks like a talented athlete to me. I would love to see him a bit more aggressive in the run game, but like, man, he's a long guy. He gets extension with the tight ends. He's not a guy who can be blocked. I think he's just a guy who needs a bit more coaching and just some more attention, you know, from the D-line coach and from Coach Knowles as well. I think he can be an impact guy, and is definitely a name to watch. Another guy is Zariah Fisher, who I think is an interesting pick here, because if you go back, you know, to his high school film, most of his highlights are at stand-up backer. But, man, he has some clips of there him rushing, and it's kind of those types of clips where like, oh, okay, that's why he got moved to D-end. You know, I'm sure he got to Penn State, put on a ton of weight. He looks a little skinny on film at that time. I'm sure his time since being at Penn State, you know how Coach Losi rolls, man, he's putting some weight on these guys. So I'm sure he's beefed up and can handle the position from that standpoint. But what I love about Zariah Fisher is he has that stand-up linebacker athleticism. He's a guy who can be played as standing up. He's a guy who can put his hand in the dirt. He's a guy who can run quarterbacks down because he's got that speed. He had a ton of picks his senior year in high school, so he's a guy that you can trust to drop, whether it's in that two-seam vertical area or at that three-hook and dropping up the number 3 receiver. He's a guy that you can trust in that type of situation because he's had those reps for some years. So I think those are 2 names that will keep it interesting and a kind of a battle to watch. I don't think there's a third guy who really vies for the starting position. I think it's going to be between those 2 guys. And then there's linebacker. And I think linebacker is another interesting conversation because there's a little bit of mismatch position-wise to me when I look at this room. You have Tony Rojas. Do you move him to the middle? Do you keep him at will? Kobe King is gone, departed from the NFL. You got Dom DeLuca, who has proven that he's a great vet who can make plays, who you can trust in the biggest moments, and has made huge. Look at this guy in the playoffs. Pick sixes. He shows up, man. When the lights turn on, this guy shows up. So it's a guy that you trust. But the problem is, you got Dakari Nelson, who we talked about during the season as a young guy, wore 30, real physical, man. When I saw him in spring practice, I loved the physicality of him. Still seemed like he needed to get down the fundamentals of linebacker, the footwork, the instincts, the reading the O-line, the seeing guards pulling, things of that nature. I think obviously it's been a year since we saw him, so I'm going to assume that he's improved in those areas, but I love the physicality. I think he can make – the problem is, it's like, do you stick a guy like that first year at Mike and make him the leader and make him the guy who's got to do all the talking and handling all the adjustments and responsibilities? Like, there's some intricacies to each position where it's like, and then you got, Keon Wiley, who we saw in a ton of, garbage time games this year, who's, man, he is fast, he's explosive, he's a great blitzer. But when I see him move and I watch him, he's just got more of a Sam Backer type of build. I don't see him being a Mike or Will. Do you move Dom DeLuca to the inside to a Mike where he may not be comfortable? There's just some questions here that I'm not sure exactly how Jim Knowles is going to answer them. He loves the 4-2-5, type of defense. So it's a possibility that for the most part, we only see Dom DeLuca and Tony Rojas in there at Mike and Will at the 2 backer spots and a ton of DBs out there. That's a big possibility that happens because we know how great Ohio State is from a DB standpoint. They always have those kinds of skill guys. But there's talent here. Dakari is talented. Keon is talented. When he's in there, he makes plays. I would love to see him be more physical in the run game, but he's slippery. And that, as you know, as a linebacker, you got to defeat blocks one way or the other. Sometimes it's smashing guys. Sometimes it's dipping that shoulder and getting around him. He likes to dip the shoulder, and he gets low. He can bend well. Is that a thing that can happen all the time? Or are you going to get pushed out of the hole because the offensive line just gets a clip of you? And sometimes that's all it takes for the running back to burst through that hole. So there are some questions here, and it's not because of a lack of talent, but it's more positional questions and where can you trust guys to be at their best and where they're best from a skill set perspective. So
it's a skill set fit thing.
Yes.
It's a skill set team fit thing, right?
Exactly.
You have a bunch of really, really, really cool pieces.
Yeah.
But does it really fit into the traditional thought process of that, right?
Exactly.
I think that's really interesting because to me, that bodes for a lot of creativity.
Exactly. It's not like a big problem. It's almost a good problem to have, almost. Yeah. But it is an issue that needs to be solved without a doubt. Yeah. It's got to be solved without a doubt. And I'm interested to see, who knows? Dakari Nelson might have, having that 1 year behind Kobe, might have picked everything up and feel really good about it. At the end of the day, everybody's learning a new new defense. At the end of the day, it's all going to be new to everybody. So come spring practice day 1, everybody's going to be on the same page. Vets are vets, but everybody's going to be learning, and everyone's going to have different learning curves to how fast they can pick this defense up. So that is a room that I am interested to see how it shapes out. I don't see in any way, shape, or form Tony and Dom not starting. I think for sure these 2 guys are penciled in because of what they've done, and they're guys who have developed a ton of trust in the program. But these second and third names, the Keon Wileys, the Dakari Nelsons, the Tamir Robinsons, I'm interested to see, who closes gaps, who ends up being most comfortable out there, because it's going to happen fast, man. You have this spring period of time, and then you go back to that, training period, a summer workout, summer conditioning, and then it's training camp. Like, this shit happens fast, man. So that's why Coach Franklin preaches all the time, like, every single day matters. Every single day counts. You got to attack it, man, like it's your last, because every day you're being evaluated, and every day guys are getting closer and closer to getting more trust and being penciled in as a starter, and guys that they know that down the line in the big games are going to be the guys. And then we can circle back to, the DB room. The big glaring spots are, one corner position and one safety position with the departure of KJ Winston. And I mean, AJ Harris is, in my opinion, he's penciled in as a starter on one side, and then the second spot is open right now. You got Zion Tracy, who played a lot of meaningful snaps, had some picks last year. I thought he looked really good. And then you got Elliott Washington, who's like the 5-time week in a row by Terry Smith. I've been seeing every week Terry Smith tweeting out, competitor of the week in winter workouts, Elliott Washington. Competitor of the week, Elliott Washington. And like, we know how important that is, that you're showing the coaches that you're a freaking grinder and you're a guy that can be trusted when it's the fourth quarter and you're dog shit tired, that you're going to go out there, be locked the fuck in, and still do your job, because that's what it is. So I love that Elliott Washington is competing at the level that he is at winter workouts right now. I thought he also had a good year, so maybe a hair better than Zion Tracy last year, so maybe he's a bit more trusted, but everybody's going to be starting at day one with Jim Knowles, and he's going to be evaluating every single person the same way, like it's day one. So these guys are going to have to go out there no matter who you are and go earn it. So I'm interested to see how that corner room, shapes out.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. I think painting the picture the way we did about how you have a lot of really cool pieces. You got a lot of fun toys. The toys don't necessarily maybe match up perfectly with, like, by definition what this position's supposed to be, but they are really talented. So I think that's the fun part about Penn State, and they're going to be in a very unique build heading into it. But listen, man, I think to put a bow on the spring ball conversation, like, really excited, a lot of newness, just, again, big picture like we talked about, that's definitely going to play a factor into how this is approached. But obviously a very exciting time for Penn State fans, Penn State football fans specifically, just being able to get another taste of it. And we look to definitely stay in tune with what's going on, how things are going, and opinions and things like that. So with that being said, let's transition to the last segment. Pro Days coming up next week. We're going to be up there covering it at State Media. Going to have a bunch of folks involved. It's going to be really cool. But just lightly, I kind of want to touch on that. Like, these guys that are heading out, the importance of Pro Day. You and I both were combine guys, so Pro Day was kind of, I think, more about how do I brush up on a few things that maybe I want to brush up on for whatever reason.
Times on certain things.
Yeah,
some guys don't have the best.
Yeah, I feel like it's that. But like, what are you excited about with Pro Day? What do you want to paint the picture of, like, what Pro Day is about? Maybe give the listeners here a little bit more perspective from guys who've been there, done that.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about Pro Day, we'll start with the combine. We have 5 guys invited to the combine. We're going to have a lot more eligible guys than 5 guys who are going to go and play in the NFL. And, the Pro Day is a chance for those guys who got a chip on their shoulder, who didn't get that combine invite, to go and show why they are also prospects and that they deserve to hear their name called on draft day. The reality of the combine is not everybody can be invited, but that doesn't mean there aren't prospects that are good prospects that are going to get drafted in this NFL draft. I think that's the most important thing to note, is that there's more than just those 5 guys. You got the benefit of having 5 guys like that is that you're going to get that many more eyeballs, that amplification at our Pro Day. Exactly. I would be remiss if all 32 teams were not there at Pro Day. I mean, we know Abdul, has been going through the foot injury and things of that nature. It sounds like he's going to be a go for Pro Day. Everybody's going to be there to see Abdul. Everybody. They're going to be GMs. I'm not talking just coaches. I'm not talking about just scouts. There will be GMs at Penn State's Pro Day trying to figure out, is this guy a number 1 overall pick? Period. End of story. Tyler Warren. I don't know how much he's going to do. I don't have any information. He didn't do anything really at the combine. Don't think he needs to. who knows if he runs at pro day? Maybe he just goes and runs routes and catches. You know, there's guys who do those type of workouts as well. But it's going out there. It's looking polished. It's making sure these guys know and putting your best foot forward heading in so that when draft comes around, when free agency comes around, guys who are unrestricted or free agent or exclusive rights free agents, you know, that they get a shot. You know, that's really what it's about. And like I said, when you got guys like Abdul and Tyler, all these guys who didn't go to the combine, man, what an opportunity. What an opportunity. Like me, I got hurt going to the combine. I tore my quad. I couldn't run at combine or pro day, but I tried to make sure I did absolutely everything else. You know, I got, I think, 20 reps at the combine. I think I got 21 at pro day. You know, just, who knows, just that one more rep. I think I jumped 34 and a half at combine. I jumped 36 and a half vertical at pro day. You know, these small increments of improvements, I mean, it shows the coaches that you're still locked in. Because a lot of guys, they have combine, maybe they do well, and they kind of just hit the cruise control. And you can't afford to do that going into the league, man. I mean, as a rookie, you've got to be on a grind. You've got to take it super serious because at the end of the day, you're going in there to take somebody's job. There aren't a whole lot of jobs in this world where every single year there is a plethora of people coming in that are looking to take your job that are going to be cheaper than you cost as a veteran. There just aren't. It's a tough environment. It's a dog-eat-dog world. And, you know, as a rookie, you got to understand that you are cheaper. And if you are just as good as a veteran, if obviously you want to be better, but if you're just as good and you're cheaper, you're going to get the nod. That's just the reality of the business. So I know our guys are, from a mentality standpoint, man, they're dialed, man. They're wired the right way. That's just what Penn State's about. So I'm excited to see these guys whose names that we don't know much. We're going to go and have an eye-opening 40-yard dash or eye-opening broad jump that makes these coaches discuss, go, whoa, who is this dude? Where is he from? What does this film look like? Because we weren't looking at it before, but clearly now we have to. So that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. And I always like to say, like you said, it's kind of like that last act in the 2-month-long process of going through, putting your best foot forward, to achieve your dreams. It's kind of like the last act. Get a little breather. You're back home. It's comfortable. You know, you feel really good about it. So stoked for these guys and obviously really excited to be up there. But Jay, I appreciate you hopping on here while you're out in Paris. Enjoy your little getaway. Happy birthday, happy belated. And we'll be back next week. Try to get some, maybe try to get someone on here or something like that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Have a little bit more in-depth conversation about it, but definitely appreciate it as always, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you guys. Keep listening. Keep tuning in, man. We'll have all your off-season questions, storylines, concerns answered here, man, from a fresh player perspective.
Yep. Ask the questions. Find us on all the socials. You know how to get to us. Appreciate you as always.